Today, we will discuss how we can reduce youth violence in our society. But first, some announcements. The generous support of City Club's corporate and media partners ensures that we can put on the state's best civic programs week after week. I'd like to thank our media partners, including Oregon Business Magazine, and our Friday Forum winter corporate sponsors, Bank of the Cascades, Miller Nash, Regents Blue Cross Blue Shield of Oregon, and The Standard, and CenturyLink. We're grateful for your support and commitment to City Club's mission. Please join me in a warm round of applause for all of them. Join us next week for a discussion on the future of higher education in Oregon with Ben Cannon from the Governor's Office, Heather Conroy from the Service Employees International Union, Emily McLean from the Oregon Student Association, and our very own Dr. Melody Rose, the Interim Chancellor at the Oregon University System. You can learn more about City Club events and purchase tickets on our website, pdxcityclub.org. As always, City Club will be live tweeting at this event. You can follow or mention us at PDXCityClub, and be sure to use the hashtag CityClub in your tweets. We will be having a question and answer session with the panel at the end of today's program. Members, please come to the microphone up here in front to ask your questions. For all of our audience members, please locate the index cards that are on the centers of your tables and write your questions on them during the forum. We will ask to collect them prior to the beginning of the question and answer period. Far too often, young people are the victims or the perpetrators of violence in our community. Over the last 2 years, Multnomah Youth Commission has brought young people together to develop policy solutions to the wide range of violence triggers that they deal with daily: anti-LGBT and gender issues, cyberbullying, gangs, unsafe homes, school bullying, sexual and date violence, and police abuses. Violeta Alvarez came to the United States from Mexico when she was 9 years old. English is her second language. In addition to attending Catlin Gable, she co-chairs the Youth Against Violence Committee of the Multnomah Youth Commission. Meza moved to the United States from Mexico when she was 10. She has served on the Multnomah County Youth Commission for 2 years and helped to create its Robert Ingram Youth Summit Against Violence. Since graduating from David Douglas in 2012, she volunteers with the Youth Commission, St. Vincent de Paul, and as a mentor for teens with the Oregon Leadership Institute. Mariam Ngoye-Dogo came to the United States from Chad at 4. She grew up in the Park Rose district but attends David Douglas. This is her first year as a youth commissioner, and she is co-chair of the Youth Against Violence Committee. Moderating today's conversation is Marc Fernandes, the Youth Development Coordinator for Multnomah County. He has worked with youth for more than 15 years as an educator, a counselor focusing on issues of diversity and cross-cultural relationships, adolescent sexuality, and social justice. Without further ado, help me to welcome today's panelists, if you want to come up here and be seated. Thank you. And Mariam, we can begin with you.
Hello, and good afternoon to everyone. On behalf of the Multnomah Youth Commission, we would like to thank everyone here and the City of Portland Club for giving us the opportunity to talk about our work on violence. My name is Mariam Ngoye-Dogo. I'm a junior at David Douglas High School, and this is my first year on the commission, and I am the co-chair of the Youth Against Violence Committee.
My name is Violeta Alvarez. I am a sophomore at Catlin Gable. This is my second year in the Multnomah Youth Commission, and I'm the other co-chair of the Youth Against Violence Committee.
My name is Meza. I'm a freshman at Mount Hood Community College. This is my second year in the Youth Commission, and I'm a member of the Youth Against Violence Committee.
Good afternoon. My name is Marc Fernandes, Youth Development Coordinator for Multnomah County's Office of Diversity and Equity. One of my main responsibilities is to staff the Multnomah Youth Commission, and it's great to be here. So as a moderator, what's going to happen is I'm going to pose some questions at first. They're going to provide a framework for you regarding their overall work around violence issues here within Multnomah County in the city of Portland, kind of walk you through the process that they've gone through from the beginning when they started the work till today. And then we'll have more questions that I'll pose to them afterwards, and then we'll open it up for dialogue and questions after. So the first question that I have, actually, before we go to questions, I'm turning it over to Violeta to do an overview.
So what is the Multnomah Youth Commission? We are the official youth policy body for Multnomah County and the city of Portland. It is a very diverse group of 42 young people, ages from 13 to 21, from all over Multnomah County and the city of Portland. And our role is to bring youth voice into policy decisions being made on our behalf. And we also advocate for the development of strong youth and adult partnership within our local government. We are made up of 3 committees. One of them is Sustainability Committee that right now is partnered with OPAL, and they are working on expanding Youth Pass. We also have an Education and Youth Voice Committee, which is partnered with one of the Cradle to Career collaboratives, and they are doing focus groups to determine the factors of student absentee in schools. And we lastly have the Youth Against Violence Committee, which we are all part of. And it started back in the summer of 2011 when Multnomah Youth Commissioners saw an increase in anti-gay and gender and gang violence, and we felt that there was something, we needed to do something about this, so we created this committee because it was also violated one of the articles in our Bill of Rights, Children Plus Youth, which I will read to you. Article 5, Family, Home, and Community. We, the children and youth of Portland and Multnomah County, have the right to loving care and a healthy environment, at home, as our homes, families, and community provides the basis for our development. A, safety and protection. We have the right to be safe in our homes and communities. Furthermore, we have the right to be protected from all types of abuse and exploitation, whether physical, verbal, emotional, or sexual, and to be supported in reporting and combating abuse. E, freedom from discrimination and prejudice. We have the right not to be discriminated against based on our race, color, religion, sex, age, mental or physical disability, national origin, sexual orientation, marital status, familiar status, political views, source of income, gender identity, or any other basis prohibited by applicable federal, state, and local laws. Such discrimination poses a threat to the health, safety, and general welfare of the citizens of Portland and Multnomah County, and menaces the institutions and foundation of our community. We have the right not to tolerate any despairing or insensitive attitudes aimed at the above characteristics. And we will talk more about our current work and what we have done so far, and also our future work.
Great.
You.
Thank you, Violeta. Okay, so for your first question, and we can start with, we'll go Violeta, then Mariam, then Anna. What from your personal life inspired you to join the Youth Against Violence Committee?
Well, I haven't been a victim of violence myself, and I'm fortunate enough to go to a school where not much of the violence happens. but I live in East Portland. And in past years, there were 2 shootings in a park that is 2 blocks away from my house. And I remember one morning, because I would always walk by that park to go to school. And the next morning when the shooting happened, I didn't know that there was a shooting there. So I walked by and I got to school and somebody told me. And I was really scared to go back home to walk by that park where an 18-year-old had been shot. And it's just a place where I go often, and it's scary knowing that, I don't know, something might happen to me, and I don't think anyone should feel unsafe in their community. I don't think anyone should be scared to walk in the neighborhood and feel unsafe. That's one of the reasons. Also, when we were doing our work in 2011 and we're seeing where the community wanted to go, in what direction, we brought like articles of people, of youth that were being affected by violence. And in November, Julio Marquez was shot and killed. And he went to my middle school, Ron Russell Middle School. And that's when it hit me that people from my community, people that I knew were being affected by violence. And I don't want anyone else to be affected by it, and I don't want anyone losing someone they love, a family member, somebody that they go to school with, a friend, sister, brother. I don't want anyone to lose somebody due to violence. So that's another reason.
So I also joined the Multnomah Youth Commission because of my neighborhood. I grew up in the Park Rose district, which is a lot quieter, and you don't see as much violence there. And I moved to David Douglas about almost 5 years ago. And my little sister started going to middle school, Ron Russell Middle School. And the people there, I don't know if it was what the reason for it, but her friends, the people that she hung out with, they would come over to our house and plan fights that they're gonna have at the school. So it's not like random fights where kids just fight because they have a problem between each other. They would plan these fights so they can have a fight every day of the week. So there's a fight planned. And because of this brought home a lot of problems to our house because she would bring her friends over and they would fight in our basement. And because of the people that she hung out with, we had the police at our door a couple of times during the first couple of years we were in the district, and my parents were very upset about this. And the shootings that go on with young youth that we hear about, every time it's on TV that you hear about some young person being shot, somehow my sister knows this person. And to know that my sister's friends are dying out there because of violence, and you know, she's my little sister and I can't do nothing to protect her because I see her cry when she loses a friend, and I don't know how to deal with something like this. So that's one of the reasons why I joined. Another reason is because when I used to go to Park Rose, I knew this kid who would come and talk to me and just tell me his whole life story. And we went to Park Rose together, and I saw him again at David Douglas. This kid was different. He had his own way of things, and people teased him. And Park Rose is a smaller school. We used to call it the private public school. Yeah. So it's a small school, and you can't go out and express yourself the way you want to. Everybody's one way. You have to assimilate with the norms. Because if you're different, you're going to be rejected at that school. I love the school, but that's how it was. So this kid was different. He tried to act like everyone else. He had a girlfriend just so people would stop teasing him. But that's because Park Rose is a small school and you can't be different, and I understand that. But he would come and tell me his life story, and I don't know why, but he would. And I think it's because I didn't always follow the norms. I was a little rebel myself. So I think that's why he came up and talked to me. And I saw him again at David Douglas. And at David Douglas, he wore a skirt. And people there thinking, when I first moved to David Douglas, I thought that this is a big school. You know, it's one of the, I think it's the biggest high school in Oregon. And there's just so much diversity. I was like, he's gonna finally have acceptance and people are just gonna treat him as an equal. And he had friends at this school, unlike Park Rose, but the way he was treated at David Douglas, which is supposed to be a huge, diverse school, was not okay. People would throw food at him and just make fun of him. He's walking down the hallway and they would make fun of him. And I'd see that and I'm just like, that's wrong. So he was bullied out of David Douglas too. So he was bullied out of Park Rose and David Douglas, and I don't know where he is now, but I hope for his sake that he's found people who accept him for who he is, because he's a great person. He just has a lot of troubles in his life. So that's another reason why I decided to be on the Youth Against Violence Committee.
Thank you.
For me, about 3 months prior to joining the Youth Commission, I had a friend that got killed really close to our school. He had just graduated from high school. He was 18. He was ready to go to PSU in the fall. He didn't really have any enemies. He got along so well with everybody. He wasn't involved in gangs, but he still got killed. And I really don't want other people to be in that position where they lose somebody that's special to them, whether it's a friend, a son, brother, somebody that you know just from being in that place. It was really close to the school as well. My cousins live in that area, and right now they're in middle school, but I'm scared that they might start hanging out with the drunk people and end up killed as well. And even if they don't get involved in gangs, just for being at the wrong time, at the wrong place, I really fear that something might happen to them. So my decision to join the Youth Against Violence Committee was to really try to create change so other people don't have to go through this or live in fear of something happening to their loved one.
Thank you, all three. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move into an overview of the work. So they've all kind of shared a little bit about their, their emotions behind and their ideas behind why they joined. So can we start, and Violeta, you'll take lead and just kind of start from the beginning and kind of share the process that the Youth Commission took to be where you are today.
So prior to our first Youth Summit Against Violence, we conducted focus groups, and these were youth groups from Multnomah County and the city of Portland, from all across. It was 16 focus groups where it was about a group of 10 to 12 young people, and our purpose was to get information about their youth experience with different forms of violence, and we also asked them questions like, what does violence look like, feel like, or what forms of violence do you think that youth experience, do you think adults may not understand? And members from the Youth Against Violence Committee were the ones facilitating this process, because we thought that having youth share their experiences with other youth would make them feel more comfortable. And from the data that we collected from these focus groups, we found 7 forms of violence, which are anti-gay and gender, cyberbullying, gang, home, police, sexual and dating, school and bullying. And we also added restorative justice as a positive way to deal with these types of violence. Also from these data, we developed policy recommendations. And from the data that we got, again, we took it to the larger Multnomah Youth Commission, where then we wrote some policy recommendations that then were taken to the first Summit Against Violence. We took them there, and youth got to split up into groups according to a form of violence. So the policy recommendations were taken there, and youth voted on them and finalized them. They added ones that they thought needed to be implemented. And then after each group voted on them and finalized them, they were taken to the larger group where it was about 250 young people, and they were voted on and then shared with local leaders and elected officials.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Violeta. So, Anna, you're next. And if you can step back a little bit and kind of share some of the objectives of the summit and then go from there.
So we knew that we wanted to bring a lot of people together to share their experiences about violence. From the focus groups, we found that some youth said that they didn't have the resources they needed to deal with violence. So we developed objectives of what we wanted to accomplish at the summit. And they were to provide resources to young people who have or are currently going through violence to support them, educate people about the Bill of Rights, both youth and adults, and how to use this document to hold elected officials accountable, finalize the policy recommendations to present to elected officials and community leaders, and bring diverse youth across the region to create social change. During the day, as Violeta mentioned, we presented the people broke out into smaller groups depending on the type of violence that they identified with or wanted to do action in. And once they were in there, they voted, they edited the policy recommendations that the Youth Commission made. They took ones that they felt like they wouldn't resonate with, that maybe wouldn't really help them, or that they thought that weren't needed. They added the ones that they thought that we missed. So it was really getting community youth involved in the whole process. It wasn't just the Youth Commission just saying what we thought was important. And then we presented them to the larger youth that went to other breakout sessions. So then everybody as a whole could vote on them and decide what they felt was important to show to the adults. Our overall day went really well for the summit. It was a 6-hour-long event, and it was on a Saturday, and we felt like it was a great accomplishment to get over 200 youth on a Saturday from early in the morning to show up to come to the event. Sadly, we didn't have enough clickers because we had a part in which we asked them questions, and they will respond by clicking a number on a small clicker, and we didn't have enough to record everybody's responses. At the end, after the summit ended, we applied for a grant for State Farm, and we got $100,000. And with that grant, it was really to keep our work moving forward this year, and it gave us money to hire 3 youth staff to support the youth against violence efforts throughout the year. I happen to be one of them. I work with Resolutions Northwest, which they do restorative justice that I will talk about in a little bit. It's giving us the funds to design and produce the Youth Against Violence Action Plan. What this action plan is a collection of all the data that we found from the focus groups and the summit, all the steps that we took, our partners, all the demographic data about Multnomah County and the city of Portland. And our hope is that other youth across the nation use this action plan to do something similar in their cities and their communities. And also for the adults in our own community to really take a look at it and see, oh, this is really something important that we have to work on. It gave us funds for the second annual Rob Ingram Youth Summit Against Violence, which actually happened last Saturday, and we had over 400 youth, so we met our goal. And it's giving us money to train over 100 youth people through Resolutions Northwest to provide intensive conflict resolution and mediation training in schools, because we feel like that's important for youth to learn at a young age, especially. funds for 14 curriculum-based advocacy service learning projects within schools. So basically, schools will take the policy recommendations that we came up with last year and really decide what they think their school will benefit from, and the youth themselves choose what to work on, how they're gonna do it, and how to spend $500 that they get per group. And it's also giving us money for more clickers this year. Which we already used at the summit because we had over 400 people this time. With that being said, we also had policy presentations. After the summit ended and we got the grant, we went to policy boards, policy bodies, like the Board of County Commissioners, school districts, the School Safe Coalition, among many others. We really wanted to show them the work that we had done and what youth in our community felt like it was important. And the policy bodies themselves identified things that they maybe were already working on, or maybe things that they will take on that they felt like they will help us implement. Because it's not only about identifying the issue, but it's actually doing something about it. In our partnership with Resolutions Northwest, right now we're working actively with 6 schools across Portland to really train youth on how to resolve conflicts in a non-violent way. It's really about repairing the harm that has been done with another person and really getting to the core issue of what happened. It's not only about like, oh, they use it in different methods, either fights between people or when students miss a lot of class or come late to class, they say, what happened? How do you feel? What caused you to do that? They really try to get to the core issue that's happening to the youth so they can address it to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Thank you. All right, so Mariam.
So I'm gonna go over a little bit about what Anna just said. So the second summit, this year's summit, the one that happened last week, we try to focus more on action steps, so to implement all those policy recommendations. And it wasn't just the policy recommendations itself, but other projects that the youth came up with during the summit. So we used the recommendations as a guide to come up with projects to reduce violence. And we kept the 3 objectives of the last year's summit, which were providing resources, educating people, and having a space for youth to share and come together and make a change. But we also added putting policies into action. So we decided to get more community youth involved this year. So we had the community youth facilitate most of the sessions. So we handed over the responsibility a little to the youth in our community.
Can I ask you to add a little bit about when you talk about community youth, who were the youth in terms of how were they connected? How did you identify the youth that were facilitating?
So the youth that we had to facilitate were experts in their field.
And what defines an expert for you in terms of that specific field?
Well, we try to get somebody who has experienced the violence and has overcome the violence, or someone who does work around the types of violence that we had, and they had an adult partner to help them facilitate the sessions. Because last year it was just NYCers doing all the sessions. This year we held the summit on March 16th, so last week. And like Anna said, we had about 400 people there. It was very exciting. And we had the youth there share their personal stories because we felt that was really important. So the first session where we came up with the action steps, the projects, we had them share their stories first so we can base our projects off their stories so we can put a face to what we're doing. So Anna went over the service learning projects. We identified 14 schools within the Multnomah County to do these projects, and the projects are advocacy service learning project within their school district. So their goal is to try to reach out to as much youth as possible to help reduce violence and implement the policies directly related to one or more of the recommendations that we have. And our goal is to have each project that they create to be to cause a long-term change, because after the money is done, we still want it to be there and be there for the people who still need it. And it's gonna last until the end of the year, so that's the time frame for these projects. So our next step as the Multnomah Youth Commission Committee, Youth Against Violence Committee, our next step is to reapply for the State Farm grant so we can continue our work, because we feel it's very important. And right now we're finalizing the grant responsibilities, so the rest of the stuff we have to do for the grant, and debriefing the summit so we can make it better next year. And we would love to continue to have summits every year, so we're working on our 3rd annual summit. And we're looking for funding to hire youth staff to support us, because we had 3 this year, who were amazing and did a phenomenal job. There was so much help. And we want our community to take us seriously and our work seriously, so we can move on with hopes to end violence.
Thank you. Great. So that gives you a little kind of overview of the history of their work. And so now I'd like to pose a question, and you can all answer these questions. So why don't we start with Anna and work our way down? So the first question is, what can adults do to work in partnership with youth to reduce violence?
I will say to really listen to our ideas. Don't dismiss it as, oh, they're just kids, so they don't know what they're talking about. We sometimes have a lot more input than you will think. And we have more experience in types of violence, especially cyberbullying. That's a thing that came up a lot that adults do not understand. And really take the time to get to know us personally and see our ideas and really work with us together as a team to reduce violence.
I agree with what Anna said, and I also think adults might want to, get educated about the subject, get educated about types of violence that you might not understand, the youth that are experiencing, just educating yourself, and maybe look through the policies that we made last year, the policy recommendations. Those right there are things that youth want to see implemented, and if people can work on them, it would be great.
Okay, so I agree with both what Anna and Violeta said. And I think it's really important for the adults to get educated, but to be there as a support and not on the front line. Back up a little and let us do what we have to do, because we know we're going through this every day and we know what needs to be done. So support, and just for them to believe in us that we actually do know what we're doing, so trust.
Great, thank you. So next question. How has your work positively impacted the larger community? Why don't we start with Mariam, and we'll come this direction.
Okay, so for this question, I would have to say I was in the home violence session, so I got to facilitate that because we didn't have anybody to facilitate it for both sessions. And I got to hear the stories, and I think that's what's going to help our community, the larger community, are the stories that the youth have to say, because I learned so much from those stories. and there was a girl in there that I actually knew. And she told me her story, and I did not know this was going on in her life. And I wish that I had known this earlier so then we could do something, because other people might be experiencing this. So the stories would be the best way. The stories that we hear are the best ways for us to positively impact the larger community.
I also wanted to say that sharing stories is a big part of what we did, because it gets you to express their feelings and share with the larger community of what they go through. But I also, this year we had the opportunity to, the youth experts that came, they shared a little bit about what each type of violence is with the rest of the youth. And I thought that was really important, educating others about the types of violence and what other youth go through that they might not know that is going on. And just giving the opportunity for you to share their experiences and educate others about what they go through, I think that's really important, and that has an impact on others. I was amazed by these stories that I heard and the things that I didn't know about other types of violence. So, yeah.
Because our work is based mostly around policy, I feel like we will have to wait a couple of more years to really see the huge impact that the policy recommendations had in our community. But overall, I feel like there's more awareness about the issues that are going on, especially types of violence that people don't usually talk about, like sexual and dating and cyberbullying, that maybe they do talk about them, but not in the deep level where we talk about, where people actually share their stories and their experiences of what they've been through. And the fact that we got $100,000 from a national company, it's a big thing, at least personally to me, because it really shows that what we're doing is something positive, and that I really hope to see change in my community in the next few years.
I just want to add, I want to kind of answer this question from an adult perspective. One of the things that I've seen that's been positively, how this work has positively impacted the community is that when we started this work, let me back up. When we were working on the other committees, the Youth Commission has multiple committees, as Violeta had mentioned earlier. Depending on the topic area, how much the topic area had a bite in the community as a whole depended on how much of a youth adult partnership we were able to create. So sometimes it was really challenging. So when the committee a couple of years ago, when the Youth Commission was working on adolescent sexuality work and education in the schools, we had a very hard time finding adult organizations or adult leaders or community-based programs that were willing to partner with the Youth Commission and really do the strong and hard work around adolescent sexuality work. However, when violence came to the surface and the Youth Commission started to talk about violence, all of a sudden, there were all these organizations in the community, all of these adults that knew it was a big issue, had been trying to work on it, and had a really hard time wrapping their minds around what to do about it. And so what we've seen in the last 18 months was a real strong increase in partnership that the Youth Commission has had with the larger community. So we've seen more intergovernmental partnership around the violence work. We've seen more partnership with nonprofits. More folks are coming to the table. We have organizations, Local Public Safety Coordinating Council, Oregon Safe Schools Coalition, the Defending Childhood Initiative, Strive, Office of Youth Violence Prevention, and then I can go on and on about folks that are adult-driven that want to partner with the Youth Commission on this issue. So that in itself shows just the amount of impact that we're having, because we have all these players at the table in conversation together. And I think that is a really big piece. So I think that's just another step. And yes, I love what Anna said, that policy takes time to implement, but at least we're starting to plant the seeds of what that might look like down the road. So next question. What obstacles do you all face in your work, doing this work? Anna, you can start.
For me, personally, I feel like adults questioning our potential, it's an obstacle. Because as I mentioned earlier, they usually tend to dismiss us like, oh, they're just kids, they're really young, they don't have any experience around this work. And I feel like that has been the biggest obstacle. Once we present our work, they're like, oh, how do you do that? What do you mean by that? Like, they always question what we do in a way, and that has been an obstacle.
In general, for the Youth Against Violence Committee, this year we wanted to get partnership with youth experts and have them, like Mariam said, facilitate the sessions. And one of the obstacles was that we didn't find youth experts for some of the areas, and I just want to see more youth leaders in the community, and I think that can be done with adults partnering and supporting youth. I think we can find them, but if adults support youth on this process.
Okay. So I was going to say what Violeta just said. So personally, for me, the biggest obstacle was going to the meetings. I had to babysit because I have 4 younger siblings, and not to be there with them. I love my siblings. I love being with them because I act like I'm 5 years old when I'm around them. So not being with them and spending as much time as I can with them because I'm leaving to college next year. And that was a big obstacle for me, but the work that I'm doing is going to make a difference in their lives, so that really means something.
Great. And last question before we turn it over to the audience. So for next year's summit, what do you envision as your personal hopes and dreams of where it goes? And why don't we start with Violeta in the middle?
Well, I would love to see more policy implemented. And since right now we're currently working on the service learning projects, I want to see presentations of youth telling us what they have done in their community and how they have been a positive impact in the community. And also, maybe I would like a session of adults getting educated about some types of violence that they might not know about. I would really love that.
So what I envision as the perfect summit would, not only the youth commissioners up on stage, but community leaders up there leading too. Community youth leaders up there too, leading. That would be amazing. And having great time, having a lot of time just to sit down and tell stories. Because the stories, I think, are the most important part, because what I've heard is very touching, and more time for stories, and hopefully 600 youth. Right.
Touching upon numbers, my ultimate goal since we started has been to be at the convention center. So until that happens, no. So I would like to see that. I would also like to see, I would love the summit to be 2 days because only 1 day is not enough time. We usually find that like the people, especially the young people, are really enjoying the conversation that we're having, especially when they get to share their stories, because usually they don't have the time or the people to share it with. And they really like that. And I would love to spend more time with the adults because the adults seem to also enjoy being able to hear from the youth. And convention center, here we come.
So thank you all very much. We are right on time. It's really fabulous. So we're going to turn it over to Pat. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your insights. Thank you as well for the work that you're doing on the commission to reduce violence in the community, and for sharing your stories today. It's great. And now if you have written questions on an index card, please hold it up high so that the City Club staff can collect it from you. Thank you. The first question for our speaker, as always, will be from today's Friday Forum host, Sue Hildick. Sue is the president of the Chalkboard Project and Foundations for a Better Oregon. Beyond her City Club leadership role, she has a deep history of community involvement and board service with other nonprofit organizations, including Oregon March of Dimes, New Leadership Oregon, and the National Civic League. Sue, thank you.
Pat. It is so refreshing to see young people on the City Club stage. Hear, hear. We need more of this. So, Anna, Violeta, Mariam, Eric, thank you very much for being here and for telling your stories. My question really is about the policy recommendations. I was wondering if each of you might give us one specific example of a recommendation.
Well, I remember I was in the school and bullying workshop last year, and I remember one of them was about youth stories, and they wanted to have like a youth group where they could share their stories so they could be listening to each other and supporting each other. I remember that was one of them.
I also recall having restorative justice trainings implemented into schools. That was one of them.
I can't remember the policy recommendations at all. I wasn't there to do it, and I've looked over them, but I just can't recall one right now.
So each policy, there's eight sections of policy recommendations, and there's anywhere between 6 and 12 per section. So, for instance, with police violence, so one of the policy recommendations that former Mayor Adams wanted to focus on last year after the summit came out was providing education to young people regarding their rights. So understanding their rights when engaging with police officers out in the streets and in the malls and in their schools. And that was a great example of, after the summit, the mayor's office saying, okay, this is something very tangible that we can put into place, that we can get information out to the community, get young people to learn about it. So that's one specific policy recommendation within police violence. Within gang violence, for instance, a policy recommendation is to develop wraparound services for families of which Multnomah County and the City of Portland are already doing, but provide resources for families and siblings of someone who's affiliated with a gang, to provide them all the resources that they need to help work at moving out of the gang situation. And so that's an example. With schools with schools and the bullying, it's implementing policies in schools that educate teachers, specifically teachers and administrators, around LGBTQ issues, so when they hear it in the hallways, they actually know how to react or respond when they see the bullying happening towards, that's homophobic or genderphobic comments. So those are, and there's SUN programs have been filtered through some of the policy recommendations, is provide more SUN opportunities, more programs within SUN schools, expand SUN schools. Youth Pass, if all young people can have Youth Pass over the summertime, and it allows them to get to jobs and extra activities, maybe it'll provide more opportunity for them to get involved with things and get access to family members that live on the other side of town. So those are some policies that came out of the recommendations, but I think there's over 70 policies that we can name off.
Carol Witherell, City Club member, and you are indeed the experts. I have learned so much, and thank you for providing your wisdom, your stories. They were moving, they sometimes were sorrowful, and I want to learn more. So I do have a question. I would like you to think about or to recall, if you can, a classroom that you were in over a period of time that was respectful, inclusive, affirming, and caring. How did it get that way? What kinds of things happened there among the teacher and students that created that kind of a culture? If you could describe that, what does it look like? It would be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, Okay, so my favorite class right now would have to be my AP Physics class. No, AP Psychology class, of course. In my psychology class, we have my teacher, Miss Ali, who's amazing, and I think she's slightly crazy. So, and she's up there, and she would teach us and share her stories and allow us to share our stories. So she's learning from us as we're learning from her, and I think that's what makes such an impact because you just feel comfortable when you're in that room. That's why A days are my favorite days, even though I have my hardest classes those days, because I get to see Miss Ali, and she just knows how to have fun.
For me personally, I recall in my high school career, I had a class called AVID, which is Advancement via Individual Determination. And it's a class that you take over 4 years. You stay with the exact same peers and the exact same teacher for all 4 years of high school. So that was a class that I felt like it was my second family at school, just because we knew each other so well. We've been together for so many years, and we had some activities that really got us to know each other on a personal level, which I think is what makes us grow together as a community.
When I was in middle school in 7th and 8th grade, I had a class, a leadership class, and we got to work together a lot, the students, and it was always fun working with other people. And because it's a leadership class, so you have to get in that class, and it was amazing just working with others. And and the teacher also got the time to get to know us, and she was really funny. And every time something was wrong, she would ask what was wrong, and she was a very caring person. And I don't see her anymore, but I really miss her because I miss somebody that I could go to and talk to whenever I needed someone.
Virginia Cornyn, City Club member. It's wonderful to see you all here, and we thank you, and to see high school students involved. But we know from what we read and see that violence starts much further down the age group than high school. So my question is, as you're looking at future summits and as you're looking at your planning, what are you doing to help children in middle school, elementary school, and even Head Start to start to develop habits that both make them aware of violence and how to deal with it?
So I know that for middle schoolers, we do have middle schoolers that attend the summit. Our summit is primarily ages 13 to 21. Also, for the service learning projects, we have elementary schools that are taking policy recommendations and implementing them into their schools, so whatever they feel like they need help with, that will benefit their school. And we have also middle schools and high schools that are doing the same thing with the service learning projects.
Well, this summit we had Park Rose Middle School there, so that was exciting. Just had that.
Yeah, I think it's hard. It's a great question, and it's really hard to reach that span of ages simultaneously. So we're trying to figure it out, and we had lots of parents call before this last summit. I have a 5-year-old. I have an 8-year-old. Can I bring them? And all the organizers are 13 through 21, and so they're kind of thinking in a 13 through 21 framework. And I was like, well, everybody's welcome, but just to let you know that it's being organized through a context of a 13 through 21-year-old. Mostly the folks that were on their committee were 15 through 17-year-olds. And it's a really important question. I think what Anna also spoke about with the service learning projects is that what we're seeing now is some of the service learning projects are high school youth that want to do their projects in their feeder elementary schools. And that's actually really exciting. So we're starting to see kind of older leaders do some scaffolding work with elementary schools. But if there's any way that people have suggestions about how to integrate a younger generation into the conversation, we would love to really partner and learn, because we really want to make sure that it's infused throughout all of the young people in our community.
Roger Meyer, City Club member. I would like to know what you, the panel, and the chair would like the City Club to do. What can we do for you folks? Because, as you know, the chair actually was one of our City Club working group experts that came and talked to us. We were looking at the public schools and their partnership. And the issue of your partnerships is really fascinating. I think that's probably one of the keys to dealing with the nonviolence. And as a pediatrician, I really would like to know developmentally what kind of things do you feel our 1,200 members can do to support your endeavors? Because, for example, we're considering doing some awards for civic stuff. Do you have any criteria that you would like to make sure are part of that? So what can we do to help? And a great presentation. I'm so delighted you're here.
So I would go back to the policy recommendations and go through them. And I think if there is something, there's about 70. So if there's something that you can implement in your work, and that would be great. And also supporting youth is also great, supporting our efforts.
If I may, let me ask a similar question, a written question. What are the top one or two things that could be done to reduce or prevent youth violence? What are the most important things you think that we should be doing?
I would have to say educating people about violence, about what's going on in their community and what it actually looks like, and providing resources for people, because I know that most people don't know that there's help out there, or they know there's help out there, but they think it's unfriendly help, like they're just gonna judge you. There's help where people are open and to just sit down with you and discuss it and figure out a way to solve the problem.
Hi, I'm a mother of a son that just graduated high school in the public school system, and I can't help noticing that you're all girls. And I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about the gender makeup of the committee and of the attendance at the summit, and if it's not 50-50 yet, can you articulate what kind of the differences are in terms of getting girls to participate in Youth Against Violence versus getting boys to participate?
That's a great question. Our committee right now is made up of mostly female. We have 2 young men. 3? Oh yeah, we have 3 young men of color, and I really don't know what makes more females come to the committee.
Conversations with the boys that you know about participating, and do you get responses from them?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the way that our committee works is like we have meetings every week, and we really talk about what we want to accomplish, and it's really like a dialogue between everybody at the table. So we don't exclude you, like, oh, because you're a guy, you don't get to say anything, you know. They really provide their own opinion and their own input, and sometimes it's really valuable because they might have a different point of view than us females, which we found really valuable. At the summit, it was also primarily mostly women, females, and we thought that was really interesting, and we really do want to get more guys involved, but we don't really know how to reach out to them. Yeah.
I think it's harder for them to express what's going on in their lives. I think that's the problem, because I talked to some guys, and some of them said they were going to be there. I didn't see all of them there. But I think just being in a position where you have to open up to other people is very hard for them.
We have run out of time for further questions today, and we're going to have to stop for the day. So please join us next week for a conversation about higher education in Oregon and how we're going to achieve Oregon's ambitious 40-40-20 education goal by 2025. And as we close for today, please join me in offering our sincere thanks to today's panel, Mariam Ngoye-Dogo, Violeta Alvarez, Meza, and Marc Fernandes. Thank you all very much. We are adjourned.